Hello, my name is Karen Duhring. I'm a coastal scientist at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science with the Center for Coastal Resources Management. We provide research and advisory service related to shorelines. I'm going to talk about living shorelines for erosion protection, including why we need them, different techniques that are used, and the benefits they provide for coastal communities. Shoreline erosion is a natural process. Some shorelines have active erosion while others are stable. Other shorelines have both stable and erosional areas. The degree of erosion depends on the presence of natural features, soil types, and other environmental factors. Natural shoreline erosion protection is provided by riparian forests growing next to the water and healthy marshes along the shoreline. The dense vegetation and interconnected roots hold the soil in place when it rains and when tidal flooding inundates the shoreline. Good water quality and healthy fisheries are also found where natural shoreline features are present. Good water quality means there can be lots of fish, crabs, and oysters, and the water can be safe to swim in. But many shorelines have been altered by coastal development. These alterations include removing the natural features that previously helped prevent erosion and keep the water clean. Many property owners choose to install engineered erosion control structures, including vertical retaining walls called bulkheads and revetments, which are sloped structures placed against the bank. These hard structures are called shoreline armoring because they replace previously softer natural features. It is well understood from scientific studies that multiple shoreline armoring structures have an adverse cumulative impact on coastal habitats, fisheries, and water quality. VIM scientists are closely monitoring tidal marsh loss due to shoreline armoring as sea level rises. Tidal marshes like this one with the bulkhead behind it will likely disappear because the water depth will soon exceed the ability of the marsh to keep pace with sea level rise. Tidal marsh migration is the shift of wetland habitats to higher ground in response to gradually increasing water levels. If there is space and a gentle slope behind a tidal marsh, it will gradually shift position to a higher elevation. But if bulkheads and revetments block this migration, the valuable marsh habitat will eventually be lost when the water gets too deep. So what are living shorelines then for erosion protection? These are alternatives to bulkheads and revetments where erosion is present and the risk of ongoing erosion requires some type of shoreline stabilization practice. Living shoreline practices mimic and restore natural shoreline habitats that reduce erosion, such as riparian forests or other vegetation buffers growing on the bank, plus tidal marshes, beaches, and reefs. This approach may not be suitable or appropriate or feasible for all shoreline locations, but there are many places where living shorelines have proven to be effective erosion stabilization techniques. Living habitats are the dominant features, hence the name. Slope changes and sand fill can be used to create wide gradual slopes and suitable elevations. The use of stone and other engineered structures may also be included, but they're supposed to be minor elements used only when necessary because the living habitats would not persist on their own without extra protection. There are three general types of living shoreline projects. Non-structural projects include only organic materials and slope changes. Hybrid projects include strategically placed engineered structures. A third type of living shoreline uses biogenic or living reefs for reducing wave energy and to support vegetated areas. Let's take a look at examples of each of these living shoreline project types. Riparian forest restoration is one of the non-structural practices. Here at VIMS, we converted a steep waterfront lawn to a restored riparian forest by planting native trees and shrubs adapted to the local environment. The photo on the right shows me standing next to the same pine tree 18 years later. While it does take time for trees to mature, this is one of the easiest, low-cost practices to reduce erosion and improve water quality. The tree canopy and interconnected roots intercept and filter rainfall, surface runoff, and groundwater moving underground toward the shoreline. While some property owners don't like their water view blocked by trees, the erosion protection and water quality benefits of restored riparian habitats should also be considered. Bank grading creates a flatter slope to reduce erosion and improve the growing conditions for bank vegetation. The most suitable sites for this practice have few trees and other bank vegetation. After bank grading, the riparian area should be restored with native plants similar to natural habitats in the local area. Planted tidal marshes is the introduction of wetland grasses and other plants to create or restore a tidal marsh. This practice requires full sun, a wide intertidal area, and low wave energy. The wetland plants selected for this practice and where they are planted should match what's growing in natural wetlands nearby. In order for the planted marsh to reduce erosion of the upland bank, it may need to be a wide marsh depending on the wave action at the location. Fiber logs and blankets are manufactured products that provide temporary support for newly planted wetland and riparian vegetation. The planted vegetation gradually fills in while the fiber material decays until it's no longer present. It's the planted vegetation that must provide long-term erosion protection, not the materials themselves. Here's an example where a frequently mowed natural marsh was restored and elevated with sand fill so it can persist with sea level rise. Fiber logs were used to temporarily contain the sand fill until the marsh grasses could become established. Here is the same site after 3 years. The marsh grasses have filled in and are growing into the fiber logs as they decay. This restored marsh is between two natural marshes on adjacent properties. Now there is a long stretch of shoreline protected by tidal marsh instead of shoreline armoring. Some shorelines are dominated by sandy beach features. Beach nourishment with dune planting is a non-structural practice for this shoreline type. The addition of sand to a beach raises the elevation and increases the beach width for better protection. Dune plants native to the local area are planted to mimic natural dunes. Like planted marshes, these features evolve over time with additional plant species appearing naturally. One of the Vims beaches was experiencing dramatic erosion that threatened adjacent buildings. This photo shows the same beach after sand nourishment and dune planting. Here is the same beach 6 years later. The dense cover of deeply rooted grasses reduces wave energy to prevent erosion during storms and tidal flooding. Groundwater that flows out onto this beach is also filtered by the plants before it reaches the adjacent river. The next practice is a hybrid living shoreline called a marsh sill. This type of low-profile structure goes by other names, but the design concept is similar. Sills are used where sandfill and planted marshes cannot persist due to moderate wave energy or possibly boat wakes. It's important for these structures to still allow for the movement of water and aquatic organisms back and forth with the tides. One way to do this is to build the top of the structure below high tides, like the example on the right. Combining oyster restoration with living shoreline practices is growing in popularity along the U.S. East and Gulf coasts. Loose shells are easily moved around by wave action and are not effective for erosion prevention. So shells are placed into bags or cages to provide a more rigid reef structure that can withstand wave action. The bagged shell is then placed along eroding marsh edges or stacked to raise the reef elevation. These bags can split open during storms or be split by sharp shells. The use of non-plastic materials is preferred to prevent the release of plastic pieces into the marine environment, but there's a limited supply of non-plastic materials. Various types of precast reef structures are also being used in living shoreline projects. These are manufactured products that come in different shapes, designed for shellfish growth and productive reefs. Instead of being placed underwater where oyster restoration reefs are normally located, these structures are strategically arranged close to the shoreline to intercept incoming waves. Here's an example where an existing marsh was rapidly eroding due to boat wakes. Oyster castles were stacked in a line along the marsh edge to reduce wave energy so the marsh grasses could recover. Oysters, barnacles, and rib mussels are starting to appear on these structures. It remains to be seen how this particular reef community will evolve over time and if the marsh erosion will be reduced. The concept behind using shellfish reefs in living shoreline projects is to mimic natural reef communities with hard foundations that reduce wave energy. as well as provide additional habitat diversity. These practices are most effective where natural shellfish populations are already present. The effectiveness of these reef practices for reducing erosion is still under investigation. So, to review, living shorelines for erosion protection are proven alternatives to shoreline armoring using living habitats where sufficient space is available and local environmental conditions are suitable. Several effective practices can be used alone or in combination to reduce erosion risk. And just like individual shoreline armoring projects led to cumulative adverse impacts, multiple living shoreline project installations can help restore valuable shoreline habitats that have been lost to coastal development. These living habitats are necessary to maintain good water quality, healthy fisheries, and a strong coastal economy. The landward migration of shoreline habitats to higher ground in response to sea level rise can also be supported with living shoreline projects. Living shorelines, or similar programs with other names, are now active in many USA coastal states and in other nations. Look for one near you to learn more. Natural resource agencies and environmental advocates can assist property owners with evaluating their erosion concerns and alternatives. Financial and technical support programs are available in many locations. And if you happen to know about a living shoreline project, share your story so we can gather as much evidence as possible about how they're working. Additional living shorelines information is provided by the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, including websites, publications, a book dedicated to the subject, and design guidelines. We're happy to help you find these resources so you can learn more about living shorelines for erosion protection. So as I leave you with a bird's eye view of a VIMS Living Shoreline project, I thank you for your interest in this topic and hope I've helped you better understand why living shorelines are important and how you can help us advocate for their use.